we're looking at contacts. I'll just share the screen and bring us all together. We'll be going between PowerPoint and seeing each other. And I'll start with the PowerPoint now. So we're looking at connection and separation in a time of radical change. And in a sense, we are experiencing that right now together. It's very appropriate, isn't it?
Very.
Just take a moment, actually, with this odd arrival to just notice in yourself how connected to this group you feel or how separate you feel. And I think that be open-minded about that, because I think there are both positive and negative things of both those experiences. So just sort of in a very open way, hold your experience at the moment. Be curious about it. Yeah, Nathan.
I was just thinking of your comment, and I guess my overriding thing is feeling a bit anxious. Not so much about the workshop, but about the very odd start that's been caused by being in this format. And on the one hand, I'm imagining that's quite a shared experience for the group, because I was hearing a lot of other people talk about anxiety. But on the other hand, that internal process somehow separates me very slightly from the group as well. So it does both.
And there I notice, as you sort of reflect openly about your internal experience, that I start to feel more connected.
Yeah.
So this is the kind of thing that we're wanting to reflect on with you today, and what that means for TA theory, because this online experience has really presented challenges and learning for us as trainers. We run a small and intimate training institute in West Wales that is very much, appropriately for the keynote speech, very much based on environment and relationship to the outdoors. And yet for a year we've been training online, and curious about how we bring all experiences of environment into our training and remain in contact with our trainees. And one of the things we've discovered for ourselves is, by self-reflecting and being vulnerable and present with our trainees, we have maintained contact with each other. So we're inviting you to come to this workshop with excitement, curiosity, optimism, if you want your vulnerability as well. And we also wanted to think about confidentiality. We mean by this, your own process is your own, but please don't discuss other people's. But do get excited about the theory and go on talking and developing that for yourselves.
So just on the, I was just thinking on the technicalities of that, Ros.
Yeah.
Conference have made it very clear that when you are in the small breakout rooms, you won't be recorded. So you can share there, and knowing full well that it's not going to be shared with the group. Of course, when you come back and share material in the big group, be mindful that not only the big group will be able to hear that, but also anybody who watches the video at a later date.
If you want to share something with us in the big group that you don't want recorded, all you have to say to me is pause record, and I will. And you'll see that the little red button goes off. So you do have that choice. Thank you, Nathan. We've started already to think about these themes of connection and separation as we've arrived, and the importance maybe of vulnerability and sharing your own process as part of that. And we've put a lot of thinking over this year into new theories that might describe these new experiences of ours. We're going to be looking at 3 particular theories of burn, which you may be familiar with, but we're looking at how this might be developed. And we're interested in hearing from you about how you would see these theories develop. Yeah, I've said we'd like your videos to be turned on, but we're aware that that may not be possible. We're also aware that you've just, many of you, been sitting down. If you want to move, if you want to stand up, if you want to stretch during this time together, please do. Don't feel that we're limited to sitting down. And actually, let's all do that right now. One of the things Nathan and I thought about is that online makes us still, and we've had challenges this year. So one of the things we thought while we were designing this workshop was the word shit. It's been difficult, and we found it very useful to stand up and shake ourselves and go, shit. You may have a more polite way of saying that or a different language, but we invite you all to stand up. We will demonstrate. Shake yourselves off, move your bodies, stretch, and just let out anything that might be held in your body right now. Use whatever words or sounds you'd like. Shit, or caca, or
Merde.
Merde. Yes. It can be very useful whenever you feel that a process is stuck. Just get off your chair and move. And if you want, stay standing up. So now we'll go off the PowerPoint back into the room together, and we'd like to invite a little contact between what you will later learn more about, the minor internal boundaries. That means the separation and the contact between you as members and your contact with us, and that we call the major internal boundary. We'll teach more about that later. So we'd like to know your name, how you want us to call you, where you are in the world, who do you know in this group already, and what your current knowledge of groups is from a TA perspective. What kinds of face-to-face and online groups have you experienced this year? As a leader, participant, or something else? And how do you feel connected or separate right now? So I will stop share. I'm just figuring out how to do that. I'll end show now. Did that do it?
Yes.
Ah, awesome. So let's hear from you all. I'm actually not sure about timing anymore because we started so late, but I do know that she'll allow us to go over time the other end. So let's have sort of 15 minutes maybe to get in contact with each other.
What were the questions again?
Okay, I will read them out again. One of the things you can do is take screenshots as we go along if you want to hold on to any of the questions.
Oh, thanks.
But what's your name?
Mm-hmm.
Where are you? Who do you know in this group already? What's your current perspective on groups from TA? What's your current knowledge? What kinds of groups have you been in this year? As a leader or participant? And what's your sense of connection or separation in this group now? You don't have to answer all those questions. It's just a starting point to invite you all to sort of bring yourselves into this room.
Okay, I'll go first. My name's Yinka. I'm in Nottingham. Who do I know? I know Enid. And I know Ross. And I've met Nathan at conference. Knowledge about groups, TA style, nil. What kinds of groups have I been in? During lockdown, nil. Sense of separation and connection. Pre-lockdown, the way this started would have caused anxiety in me. But now I just take it in my stride. It just feels like it's part and parcel of the way of being, connecting and not connecting. So that's me.
Yinka, I can't tell you how wonderful it is to see you.
Been a while.
I do love your comment, Yinka, or the inference of your comment that somehow a year on Zoom has made us much more relaxed about things going a bit wrong and a bit of uncertainty and not having to get fully dressed up for a meeting. So some of that perfectionism has just had to go out of the window. I love thinking about that.
I have sorely struggled with that over the year.
Who wants to go next?
Gina, I can see you bouncing.
I'm sitting on my ball. So I'm Gina. I know Rosalind and Nathan because I study with them. I'm in Bristol. So I have been with the group, it's my second year. And this is what I know about groups, being a participant. I have done some groups as a leader. Leader is a little bit too strong, but I have done coffee mornings, like walk-in open groups in Cruz for many years, since 2012. But we stopped doing them during the lockdown.
What's your sense of separation and connection at the moment?
To this group?
Yeah.
I have a good feeling. I'm very excited. Obviously, I love to see you both. I really liked what Inka said. I'm really excited because I was with Enid during the first workshop, and now she's here again. So I can know her. She doesn't know me, but
she does now.
She does now.
She does now, I know. And I'm excited to know more the other people in the group. So I
welcome,
be more connected.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'll go next since people keep mentioning me. Yes, I noticed you in the last one, Gina. It's really nice. We're shadowing each other. I feel I do know, well, I know Isabel and I know you too. And of course, I know Yinka, which is really nice. I'm distinctly, the thing I find disconnecting, even though I know they're there, is the people who can't join with video, which is interesting. I wouldn't have thought that would bother me so much, but I do feel it's like in the last workshop, they were all fully present, but it felt like they were disembodied spirits who suddenly came out the wall. It was really quite interesting, you know, the experience of talking in a breakout room to two people who weren't physically, visibly present. I've been in loads of groups during lockdown. I mean, online, I feel like I've got quite used to connecting online, but I'm loving that I can, everyone at the allotments now beginning to come back out their houses and, you know, and we're back into being a community again. And that's really good, even though we don't get that close to each other. It's still a really nice experience. So I realize that although I don't mind this, and I quite like it in some ways, I think there's something special about meeting up physically that I'm really looking forward to. So I've got a bit of a kind of mix that I feel quite connected and anticipatory, I think is the word. Yeah.
It's lovely to see you, Enid.
Hello, my name's Emily, and I am in Worthing, which is down near Brighton in the UK. I trained with Richard Bramford, so I know him in this room already, and I don't know any of the rest of you yet. In terms of perspective on groups in TA, did some in my training, did some group supervision, some group therapy, so kind of experienced that, as well as before work, facilitated some of that. My background's in substance misuse, so for a long time I ran groups in the drugs field. But obviously it is different when you're running it as a therapist, so that has changed for me. I think when I think about my groups in the last year, I've kind of continued with supervision group, I've continued with peer supervision group, and I run a charity locally which is for mums with drug and alcohol problems, and I've run that at a distance, 2-meter distance locally. That's kept going, and that's been a group that's been very valuable to me during lockdown. And whilst I still feel part of groups during this last year, how, as it is for everyone, how I've connected with those groups has changed. So my ability to read people or to feel like I connect with them has changed, and yet I'm still in connection with them. And my feeling of sort of connection and separation right now is that I've just done a workshop, so I feel connected to this community of people, this thing I'm doing today and experiencing today, and yet I feel separate from this particular room right now. So feeling a real blend, I suppose, of connection and separation.
Loving your energy, Emily, and we're going to look a bit later at how the leadership role might be changing online, so it'll be really interesting to hear your feedback on that.
I'm trying to turn my camera on, but it's telling me to use another one. I wasn't aware I had another one, but it's telling me to use an alternative camera. So I'm sorry if I'm adding to that sense of isolation. Well,
let's hear from you anyway. Is this Nina?
Yeah.
Hello, Nina.
I'm in lots of groups. My main role is as area manager for statutory mental health services. So I lead weekly supervision groups for 3, sometimes 4 teams. I'm also I'm at the Burn Institute, and I'm doing the psych and the org. So I'm part of those groups, and then splinter groups for peer supervision. I do a Buddhist meditation group as well on a weekly basis. I'm part of my family group, which you'll probably hear in a minute. So lots of groups, and I think I echo really what people have said, and that because in some respects it's become the norm, and it feels okay, and I feel quite connected. But then I kind of oscillate between feeling that this is okay to feeling this is absolutely not okay when things aren't going so well, and you're not able to kind of be present with that person and kind of be attuned to their energy in a full physiological, visceral sense. I find it really hard when things aren't going so well. I find that I want to just, switch the laptop off and just go and just meet people. So sometimes it feels tolerable, sometimes it absolutely doesn't. And there's just I don't know, just a yearning to have real, true contact with people. It does become the norm, but then I think when you do meet with people in person, you realise, I think, what a loss it is, that you can't kind of do that on a day-to-day basis. So, and I do, if I'm leading groups, I get really frustrated when people don't turn their camera on. And I feel that I want to insist that they do, knowing that people have reasons why they can't. But I don't like it. I think that creates isolation. I think it's much more tolerable when you can do video groups and not just, phone or talking groups. So yeah, I think it's okay. It's doable. I think a balance would be good of online groups and face-to-face groups. That would be nice. That would be ideal. I like that I can sometimes on and have that flexibility that makes kind of home and work-life balance a bit easier. So it does have its advantages. But yeah, I do, and I don't know why, but at the minute I do feel particularly isolated. It feels a bit like no man's land at the minute. It feels a bit like you can meet with people, but only just a little bit and only just outside. And I find that in some ways worse than not being able to meet with people at all, because it's, I don't know, just some thoughts anyway.
Thank you. Lovely to hear your voice. And I like, Nina, that you broadened the definition of groups that we might be in to include your family, not just thinking about training or therapy or supervision. So really thank you for adding that.
Yeah, thank you, Nina. Really welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll go next. I'm feeling intimidated isn't probably quite the right word, but I don't know anybody, and I'm still in training. So so I'm kind of feeling that everybody is probably going to know an awful lot more than me. But I'm still really looking forward to seeing what's going to come out of this. So I'm based in South Devon, and I'm training at the Iron Mill College in Exeter, and I'm in my second year there of the 4-year course, and absolutely loving it. And my day job at the minute is a teacher. When you talk about groups, the first thing that comes to my mind is my class. And this has been a year of real disconnect, with having some of them at home, some of them in school, them coming in and out, and eventually getting them all together and back, like my little brood, all in the room together again, which is lovely, but has created a lot of challenges. So for me, juggling training as a psychotherapist with my teaching and being able to access this community online is that it's brilliant, because it's opened up so many doors and avenues and a whole community that I didn't even know existed. And so yeah, it's great. So I miss my training group, because we've been online now since last February. And we've not seen each other in person, but we still regularly meet every month for the weekend, and we've still had a huge richness of learning and connection, which has been brilliant. And then we also now meet separately from our tutors and have a sort of peer supervision group that we've set up. So yeah, I'm loving the opportunity that being able to meet like this gives me, but also missing the actual physical connection of being in the same room. So I'm happy to be here and looking forward to learning and yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
Lovely to have you here, Jude. So we're really inviting everybody in the room to take part in co-creating our thinking. And, I'm hearing you've been teaching online for a year. You're going to have some real insight that I suspect nobody has here. So please bring your voice to the table and don't feel intimidated by us oldies.
Thank you.
And we will be teaching the theories in their original form first. So you will have some of the knowledge. And if you're interested in it, you'll be able to go into it more.
Okay, thank you.
No, it's lovely to meet you, Jude.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, I wasn't sure whether you could hear me. First of all, apologies for the video. I have no idea what's going on. In fact, I was a bit distracted when everybody was speaking. I was trying to get my video on still, seeing if there's a way that I can make that happen. And I'm going to try if there is a break somewhere to see if I can make that happen, because starting with the last question, I am feeling separated right now, saying I can see everybody, but none of you are able to see me, especially because it's a small group. In a larger group, it doesn't matter whether are 50, 60 people, but because this is a small group, I think the impact is far more. And I'm going to try and see if I can make that happen sometime during the session today. My name is Jalaja, and I am from Bangalore in India. I do not know anybody in this group. I'm meeting you all for the first time and happy to meet you all. I do have some sense of groups. I use groups primarily in the organizational role that I do. So I do use principles of groups from a TA perspective in the work that I do. I have been in lots of face-to-face groups, before the pandemic set in. I am also a trainer and a facilitator. So a lot of my work is around working with groups, and therefore I've done quite a bit of work there. The last 1 year have been full of online groups because a lot of the work shifted online, and I can't say I honestly completely enjoy the experience, but I also acknowledge the reach it's given me to be able to reach out to people. I think that's something that's very precious for me in the last 1 year, to be able to have reached out to so many people and learned from so many people. But given a choice, I'd love to be in a face-to-face group any day in terms of the impact and the energy we bring in. I've been in groups both as a leader and a participant. For groups that I facilitate, I'm obviously the leader there. But for a lot of groups, I'm in as a participant. And yeah, that's where I am. A bit distracted still with my video not being on, feeling the, sort of being the odd one out right now. But I'm hoping I can fix that sometime.
Where are you in the world?
Bangalore, I think you said?
Bangalore in India.
Bangalore. I was there a year ago. It was so beautiful.
Oh, yes. Yes. Thank
well,
you.
Before lockdown.
Which
so
part of
January.
India were you in? Bangalore?
I was in Bangalore, and then I went to Coimbatore for the MLL. And I I was all around in South India.
Oh,
I love India.
Thank you.
I was just thinking about the video issue, and given that what Isabel and Richard seem to be implying is it's a clash between reattendance and Zoom both wanting your video, it might be if you simply close reattendance, that will free your video up. I'm not a techie, that's just a sort of logic question. So.
I actually tried logging out of reattendance multiple times and then coming back, but it still doesn't seem to be working.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm aware, thanks Nathan, I'm aware of time and also needing to move on, but we would like everybody's voice at any rate at the beginning. So we'll finish this checking in period at 15:15. So we've got a few more minutes. So if the people who haven't said hello would say hello now, that would be lovely. So that we can have everyone's voice present.
Hello, I'll jump in. As Emily said, we trained together in Crowborough, which is where I live. So who else do I know? I met you, Ros, and Nathan at the Liverpool conference a few years ago. I attended one of your workshops, Nathan. I think it was on working with angry men.
Yes, yes, thank you.
Group knowledge. So yeah, I was in group supervision during my training. I then went into individual supervision, but I've 6 months ago joined another group. It's a co-created, or it's headed by Paul Robinson and James Sweeney. So there's education, there's psychotherapy, it's quite a mixed bag. Outside of TA, before lockdown, I was in a band. I'm a drummer.
Great.
We tried to do the best we can online, but it's not quite the same. What else? I'm an obsessive music fan. Got thousands of records. used to be a music journalist. So I'm in kind of groups that we kind of obsess about music together. And I'm also a dad of 3.
That's a group.
Great to have you here, Richard.
Good to have you here,
Thanks.
Richard. So I think it's Isabel, is it Fauna? And has Jane said hello?
No, I haven't said hello, but I'm going to say hello now. And I've really tried to sort out my video, so apologies for that. But anyway, I'm here, so that's the main thing.
It's good to meet you, Jane, and you'll have more chance to share more later because we've got quite a few different ways of talking.
Yeah, oh, that's good.
Isabel, I've seen you nearly say hello several times. Go now.
Hello.
Hello.
Done. So, yeah, I'm Isabel. I'm near Southampton. I know Enid, Rosalind, Nina, and I think Inka. I think I've met you somewhere one day. Yeah. Okay, so I'm not crazy. And groups, but yeah, I'm in the psychotherapy training in 3rd year. I've attended redecision marathons, process groups, and in my life I'm always in groups. I'm the youngest of 5 siblings, so groups, I'm always in a group anyway. So yeah, I belong to a community farm. So I relate to what you were saying. It's lovely to go back and see people and see everything growing again. Yeah, I don't know. Groups, yeah, groups. And I enjoy being alone as well, so it's a bit of the mix. So today I feel connected because just because I've just done my workshop before, so I'm just like zoned out. It was so stressful, so I'm really glad to be with another group where I can feel like we're sharing something together, actually. Yeah.
Great.
Lovely, Isabel. Really good to see you. I keep running into you recently, and it's really lovely.
Yeah, same here. Yeah. Thank you.
Fauna, do you want to say hello briefly to us?
I'll say hello. Yes. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so I was counting up how many groups I'm in online, actually, as you were all talking. And I realized that I'm in 4 online groups that are, well, various things, 2 of which have been going on for a year and 2 shorter ones. A couple of them are monthly and a couple of them are every fortnight. And I see all of my clients online. So that's about 15 clients a week online. And I'm also an online trainer myself of psychotherapists. So that's a new business that I've started up. So then for me to come into this group and it to have a completely different pace to it as well. And I've not been in any psychotherapy training for a long while. I've not been to TA conference for quite some years as well. And I just thought, oh, I remember this. This is so different, to everything that I'm doing all the time, week in, week out. And this is reminding me of something that I was a part of before. And then I found myself feeling disconnected. So what I did as each of you were speaking is I hooked onto something that each one of you said. For me to think, oh yeah, I'm connected to you because you're a trainee. I was a TA trainee. I'm connected to Yinka because she lives in Nottingham. I live in Nottingham. I'm connected to Nathan and Rosalind because they're trainers. I'm a trainer, and I know Enid from before, and Richard knows about tech, and all of these things. I was thinking, I've got a connection with you and you and you and you, and then all of a sudden it felt like, oh, okay, so I'm here and we're all connected in one way or another. And even though we don't know each other.
Yeah, I love that.
That's why it felt, thank you for bringing that up, Fauna. It's a lovely reflection, and it's one of the reasons why we felt that this time of checking in was so important, especially when we're thinking about groups and thinking really of how we're developing the imago of the group from something where we don't know and we are separate to something where, as you said, Fauna, we're connecting in with the different things that different people are experiencing. So yeah, lovely reflection. I'm going to put you into breakout rooms now, but I'll share with you what the exercise will be. There is my trusty PowerPoint again. Can you see it? It's not being a super big thing anymore. It's being a smaller thing. So in small groups, we're 15 minutes on, which actually we're sort of with the timing given when we started. So thinking of yourself as a participant member, so just focusing on that part, not leadership at the moment, but as a participant in a group. How's your experience of group been different since working online? And some of you have started to reflect on that. And with that, considering your experience of connection and separation. And we wanted to give you some specific TA areas to help you focus this. So we're not yet looking at the major group theories. We're looking at power dynamics, relationships, and meaning making. We could spend an entire day on that. The impact on diversity, and I really think that there have been both positive and negative aspects to that. Transactions that occur, and think of the process of being online and being put in and out of rooms and having to leave a room suddenly. You know, look at the whole experience of online training and the transactions that occur in that. Time structuring is hugely important, I think, and the changes and losses and gains in a way in time structuring.
Yeah, that's
anything else. What you can say, Nathan?
I was thinking time structuring was one of those bits of theory that when I learned it 10 years ago or whatever it was like, okay, that's interesting, and so what? And oh boy, has last year changed my thinking about that.
Yeah.
So in terms of the structure of this discussion, this bit is really about your personal experience of being in groups over the last year. We will, in a moment, do some either a refresher or an introduction to some theory, depending where you already exist in the TA continuum. And later in the workshop, we'll be thinking about how do we apply those theoretical lenses to our changed experience. And hopefully we'll come up with some new thinking and some adjustments to models and some co-creative new experiences.
Yes, lovely. I'm just going to open the room's screenshots of how your page looks, and I'm just taking one of this because actually having an upside down participant is one of my favorite experiences ever.
Well, you can say that. You can say that, Ros. I'm actually finding it really stressful. I'm glad you find it funny. I mean, I find this really stressful, I have to say. But anyway, I'm staying upbeat and thinking it's just part of the process.
Absolutely.
And has anybody
actually,
ideas?
Jane,
I do know
actually having
else had this problem this morning, but I don't know how they put it right. So.
So Jane, actually I can understand the difficulty because I tried reversing my mirror thing to being how other people see me and realized that if I move like that and my head does that, it's very disconcerting. So I imagine it is the same for you.
Yeah, well, at least you can see me now.
Yeah, that is a plus.
Really nice to see you.
Actually, if I go like that, can you see me? No, never mind. We'll just have, it is what it is. It's all a process, isn't it?
Certainly is.
Well, it is really lovely to see you, even though it's upside down. And we can still tell that that's a sort of full-bellied laugh and smile.
And of course, that's an experience. It just isn't going to happen in the real world, is it?
Well, it's good that we can all laugh about it anyway.
I'm sorry because he's so stressed, but this is the funniest thing I've seen. Oh dear.
Oh well, never mind.
We're really aware of how time is also compressed for us all. I know that we have the option to stay until 2:45 as opposed to 1/2 because that's the length of time we have this room for. Is there anybody who needs to leave earlier than 2:45? Because we'd like to have everything. So is it okay with everyone in the room that we finish at 2:45? That's lovely. Thank you very, very much. We're very happy to be here for that extra 15 minutes. So we thought, again, partly because of time, that we'd ask one person from each group to just feed back briefly what you discovered. You'll be in the same group later on and be able to develop it more then and have a little bit more time for reflection as well. So yeah, group room 1, room 2, or room 3. So let's hear from you. Tumbleweed.
I think, Emily, I don't want to drop you in it, but I think you had some really interesting things to say. I'm dropping you in
it. No, thank you, Enid.
About group boundaries in online, which I thought was interesting, actually. And I hadn't thought very much about that, probably because I'm Miss Whiplash and everybody has to behave themselves. But, you know, but I thought it was really interesting. Do you want to share that?
I'd love to, Enid. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. So I was saying that my experience as a participant in groups turning into online spaces is that people's ability or people's choice to commit to the group rules is something that becomes negotiable in a way that it isn't so much when you're in person. The boundaries become more porous, I think, and I think that creates an interesting dynamic when it comes to working alongside each other, and in terms of power dynamic, that's a real shift. I think that, you know, people, we've seen online quite a bit, or certainly I have in the media, people walking in front of their cameras without realizing they're still on. People you know, like our friend Jane today, having real difficulty with we all have, actually, I have as well, difficulty with getting your picture the right way out, getting the sound quality right. My internet dropped out earlier. Those shifts in relationship and connection, some are unavoidable, some you know, can really play into script ideas for us, and how that can be really activating in a group is something I've experienced since group work sort of turning online, and in a way that not everyone will always be aware of. So, for example, you may not be able to hear the sound of my family outside on the stones clunking around, but I can. And a conversation about welly boots earlier, where are the welly boots? And I'm thinking, they're in the bloody cupboard. Why don't they know it's in the cupboard? And then I realised that actually I've got an ear outside because I'm now in my home. So that's something I've noticed about group boundaries and dynamics, power dynamics, and I think that leads into consent as well. Consenting and confidentiality in my personal private environment, which is no longer entirely private if I've got the windows open.
That's a really lovely reflection, Emily. And you know, Roz and I have had some very similar things about the nature of the major group boundaries. We are going to teach this briefly in a minute, so anyone who's going, what on earth are they talking about, don't worry. We're going to do some teaching and then revisit the ideas you have now through the lens of theory. So if we're using a couple of words that currently don't necessarily make sense to you, they will do in a moment. But Emily, lovely reflections. And the fact that everybody has their own individual environment rather than being in one room opens so many different ways of experience. I mean, I love your where are the bloody wellies, you know, I can just imagine me doing the same thing. But it means you're not entirely here.
Yeah.
Lovely, lovely reflection. Thank you.
And also the invasion of our private spaces. So I'm lucky enough that this is our training room. So I'm actually in my workplace. But for most of our trainees, they are in their homes and we're seeing into them, which we wouldn't usually do. So I loved you bringing that sort of invasion of privacy.
Yeah.
Another group that's, or any reflection that comes up in response to that.
Shall I speak for our group?
Yeah, Jane, thank you.
Yeah, we were reflecting on the silencers that ordinarily talking actually more about client work than the group, but significantly I was saying with my clients on Zoom that there's a feeling of working quite hard because you're filling in maybe more gaps that you ordinarily would do in the therapy room. And I think that's the same with groups, you know, the connecting within the group and filling in the silencers or wondering what's going on in the silencers and maintaining that connection with everybody. And, you know, the challenges around that, that evoke, this isn't how we were designed to work. So everything is challenging in that way and accounting for it and being kind to ourselves around it. So I think that's where we went to in our group and all the technical issues as well. I mean, I was reflecting on a client that I speak to in the car, you know, and how that's the space where she can get away from her family. It's actually in her car, and that's how we have our Zoom session. So I think these are all challenges for all of us, but we can grow from it. So
absolutely.
Yeah, Jane, the idea of having to work quite hard, I think I very much resonate with that over this year, how hard we have to work to create contact that would be an automatic part of, say, being in this room.
Yeah.
And work hard to create safety in all the odd places and ways that we meet.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
being aware how that can feed into our own drivers as well, you know, certainly feeds into my sort of hurry up, try hard. And particularly today with this, I realized how, you know, my try hard kicked in terms of staying in the group. I went off and found my son and, you know, and actually came back into the group, and now I'm back in the group, albeit upside down. I have come back into the group. So I'm going to stroke myself for that. So, you know, that's a very real connection, I think, that is relevant with the way that we're all working at the moment.
Really good reflection, Jane. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So I think it's room 3 we haven't heard from yet.
Yeah, I noticed Jude was going to speak at the same time as Jane. Do you want to continue now, Jude?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I remember that feeling of being invaded by all of a sudden having all my colleagues and my class and my training group and my tutors and everybody suddenly being in my personal sort of private, you know, coming into my home, and finding that quite a challenge at the beginning. And I'd sort of kind of forgotten about that. And as we were talking, that sort of came up again. And yeah, and that sort of always having, I'm aware that my dog's snoring and the washing machine's whirring in the background. And there's that sort of sense of distraction. You're not quite in one place or another place, you're kind of in between. And also I think sort of my first year of my training group, some people then didn't continue. So there was a lot of loss in starting a group in person and then ending a group online. And we were sort of a sort of sense of it's quite empowering to actually manage to still connect and to be in the group, but it was actually quite there's quite a lot of anger and frustration then that that we couldn't be together to say goodbye and that the group had to end in that way. I think we reflected and talked on sort of that attunement and how we notice what's going on for other people and the loss of not having those incidental conversations in the sort of the kitchen at lunchtime, or being able to sort of, that it's a very abrupt ending of an online meeting. 1 minute you're all together and the next you're all gone. And you can, that transition's very abrupt. And I think
so it's there, you're talking about those really important rituals, again, thinking of past timing, the rituals of coming and going. And I was thinking of your colleagues that dropped out, or your fellow trainees that dropped out. There's no goodbye. They're just not a square on the screen anymore. And
I think we know, well, in our group, and we did talk about it in our group, that there was less willingness, I think, to challenge or for conflict to come up. I think we're all trying to take care of each other and be very wary, because I don't know, there's like a new set of rules, and how do we manage this space so we're all going to be on our best behaviour and be our be perfect drivers kicking in, and we don't want to upset anybody, because we just that ability to manage that felt very new and challenging.
So that's again such a useful reflection and matches with what we've seen ourselves. And what we were so pleased to realise when we revisited the group theory for our own training group was actually Byrne predicted this would be the kind of thing that would happen in this kind of scenario. Obviously, he wasn't thinking of COVID and the internet, but as we start to look at the theory of group structure, and again, we're going to teach that in a moment, what happens when there is this problem with the boundary is actually the primary focus on the group cohesion. So all these things you said, that we're less likely to challenge, we're more likely to let things go, we're more likely to focus on activities than work towards genuine vulnerability and authenticity are all actually in the theory. We just love the fact that Byrne's basic theory from 60 years ago was so applicable to a situation that nobody would have predicted until a year ago.
With that, I think I'll move on to the theory. I try to be a timekeeper.
That was a deliberate segue, Ros.
That was excellent. I'm going to share the screen. We account that for some of you, this will be, this is, by the way, the feedback from the group. So this is actually, I've been writing down the things you've been saying. And afterwards, if you send me your emails, I'll happily send out a PDF of the whole training. And then you'll have your thoughts written in there. So for some of you, we account this will be a repeat, a refresher, and for some of you this may be new. We love group theories, and we've, like with time structuring, we've rediscovered them in a new way this year. So the three theories that we are focusing on are group structure, which is the one that has immediately come up in your reflections, group imago, especially for me thinking about the provisional group imago and what is it now, and I will explain this for those who you don't know about these theories. What is it that we are now going to be carrying with us as we go out into the world again in terms of a new provisional group imago? And seating plan has become particularly interesting.
And that's a piece of theory that actually one of our first year trainees came up with.
Yes, so we've got a bit of one of our trainees' work on this coming up in this presentation. So I took this photo because this actually happened in September whenever it was, a year ago, 2019, isn't it?
Now,
where we were able to meet face to face. And I reflected how naturally we formed this circle. So here we are, being the natural shape of a group, a circle, a boundary. And in TA, we call this the external group boundary. And this is very much what you have all been reflecting on. There is another really important shape, which we've put a lot of thought into, which is called the major internal boundary. And this is what holds the leaders, so we've put ourselves in there, at the center of the group structure. And when you put that together with the external group boundary, you can see there we are in the middle, and there is this boundary that holds us all together with you all as members there. So at the moment, this is where you are, and this is where we are, and this is our experience, our shared experience of the group.
So it's really interesting that, you know, back in '63, Byrne would have written about these boundaries as being both psychological, but also to an extent physical. So part of the external boundary will be the room that you've been in. And of course, that's completely changed online when we sit in our own rooms connected as squares on a screen. And whilst the major internal boundary around the leadership is predominantly psychological, there are those little things that often mark the leader out. So when we sit at the front of our training group, hey, we've got bigger chairs.
And people tend to not want to sit next to the leader, or they desperately want to. So there's always a specialness about where you sit in relationship to the leader, which brings us on to this other piece of theory, which is the group imago. Nathan very kindly went and looked at what the definition of an imago is, which is an unconscious, idealized mental image of someone, or in this case, of a group, especially a parent, which influences a person's behavior. Byrne used this to describe the imagining or the fantasy that we have coming into a group, and that will be influenced by our experience of our family and our experience of previous groups. So he called this the provisional group imago. This provisional group imago is then updated as we get to know the group better, and different theoreticians, including Keith Tudor, have updated how we think about this. So, one of the questions I asked earlier is, how has being online and being used to not sitting in a circle, having walls around us, changed our experience of our group imago, which we will then take into the outside world. One of the things that we've discovered at TAC is our advanced trainees who went online are looking forward with great expectation to meeting each other again. Our foundation level trainees are actually not enthusiastic about it at all. So their group imago is absolutely based on having a computer in front of them, and the idea of meeting face to face is actually terrifying.
Yeah,
I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, it really is.
So this has been actually drawn by one of our trainees in her recent assignment. And there you can see the internal group boundary within the drawing of an imago around Rosalind and Nathan. So everybody in the group will immediately relate to the leader or leaders. As I said, asked you when you came in, who do you already know? Those will be the individual bubbles of people who you already have relationships with. Or if you've come not knowing anyone, I think, as Emily said. Was it Emily who said she didn't know anyone? It wasn't you. Who was it who said she didn't know? It was Jude, wasn't it? Yes, Jude. I apologize.
I also didn't know it.
And yes, so two of you didn't know anyone. So you would have been in this position with everybody in this clump with some knowledge of us as leaders. So when you were imagining it, you'd have gone like, well, I know there'll be leaders, there'll be a bunch of others, and then there'll be me. But some of you will have come knowing that you had somebody else in the group who you might have already known.
Yeah. So of course, what the Imago theory explains, that as we start to form with a group and as we start to differentiate the other individuals, we move from a very undifferentiated image like we have on screen, me, you, and the others, to actually 12 or is it 13 people that we have here that begin to have a sense of each other as different individuals. And I'd hope already in the, what have we been here, an hour and a half, that your provisional Imago before you came into this group has already started to update as you've built connections. I loved Vorna's idea that she's building connections by those little things that connect us. We know the same people, we went to the same college, we live in the same area, we have the same interests. So all of those things are updating your idea of the group that's around you as each individual becomes an individual, differentiated from the mass.
So you end up with not a blob of those others, but lots of separate circles that you have relationships with.
So thinking about online work, how does that process of development change when you are a set of squares on a screen who don't have the opportunity to pass time, who don't have the opportunity to chat over coffee or a cigarette break or on the way home or on the space before? So that's an interesting thing to reflect on as we update this theory for the post-COVID Zoom age of training and being in groups.
And this leads us on to seating plans, which is another of Byrne's theories, which a bit like past timing, Nathan always went, yeah, so people sit in chairs in a room. And of course, we don't anymore.
Yeah.
We actually sit like that on a screen. Now, what I had not realized the impact of this, because I tend to be being a trainer, so I know I'm going to be in the top left-hand corner for me. But what this trainee who wrote this very excellent essay pointed out that for the first several training sessions, so several weekends, she was stuck between Ros and Nathan on her screen, which meant she had that anxiety of being between the leaders, which meant that she adapted by always having to check in more or less first, because she was a good student who would take care of her trainers and wasn't able to be as vulnerable and open and connected and authentic as she would have otherwise. And then she learned she could move herself around the screen, and she did that. She got out of the hot seat. But what an extraordinary thing. And that led me on then to think about the fact that all of us have different images of what our group was like and who we were sitting next to. And somebody else can move me to not, to being on the second screen if it's a really large group and they don't want to see me, or right beside them if they want to be close to me. And I don't know about that. Or they can pin me and have me really big. So there are all these things that we can do to each other that I think are part of the seating plan that will change the way we experience the structure and the group Imago developing.
Yeah, I was reflecting on this as we were coming in, Ros, and thinking not about not about sort of modern groups, but at school I would choose to sit at the back. I would choose to sit at the back of the bus. Often teachers would choose to put me at the front so they could keep an eye on me. But, we do make those choices. They were quite important. You would be eyeing a room to think, where do I sit? Not too close to teacher, but not too far away that I can't see the board. All of those things were very present in our unconscious process that have now been taken away.
What we wanted to invite you to do at this point is, you can see we've got two different pictures of the same training where people are in different places relative to each other on the screen. And what we thought, if you're willing to do this, is to take a photo at the moment of this screen and email that to me. I'll put my email back up there, and then if I can, before the end of this training, I'll put them all on a page so you can all see where you are relative to each other. So you'll see all each other's different seating plans. So is that okay with people? And if you don't want to participate, we won't put this out for general public viewing. So I'm just photographing it now. I'll go back to the screen share so that you can see my email. It's rosalind.sharples@me.com. So if you just, if you feel like just emailing me those, in the next time when you're in breakout rooms, I'll put them all together on the PowerPoint so you can see all your different experiences.
So, Ros, I was just thinking about the timings, given that they're completely gone to pot so far. We were hoping to take a break around now, just so people can have a stretch and a toilet break, etc. Now, I'm thinking it's 4:05. Maybe if we agree to come back around past, but people take their break within their small group, so they can.
That's a really good idea.
They need. Does that make sense to other people? Thumbs up,
Yeah,
so I can get a sense, or thumbs down if you need to. I have no idea what you've done, Jane, but I'm going to take it as a yes.
I was busy taking a photograph. I missed what you said, Nathan. I'm sorry.
So, Enid, we were thinking of taking a break, but we're aware we're behind time. So what we thought we'd do is put you in a breakout room now, and between you decide how long you need to take for your own break, and then we'll come back at about 4:30.
Yes, and you will also then have a chance to do the small group discussion on the next questions.
Yeah.
So,
Rosalind, have you sent us the email ID? I'm not able to see it on the chat.
Okay, I'll put it on the chat. It was on the. That's a very good idea, actually.
That's a great idea. Vaughan has asked the same, I think. Put it in the chat, then people can just copy and paste it.
I am. Yeah, there it is. Can everyone see that?
Yes, thank you.
Good thinking. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
So, oops, Isabel's has already arrived. Oh, that's so exciting. I mean, this for me is the fun part of doing this. So I'll share again. Enid sent hers. Thank you, Enid.
Wow, people are quick.
So you can decide how long you want to have for your break. And we'll be back. As you can see, the timing keeps changing. And we'll come back at 4:30. So in small groups, thinking of these theories that we have just taught, explore your experiences of environments and seating plans, develop your thinking of structure. And I think particularly interesting to think about what is your sort of internal fantasy, your provisional group imago that you will be carrying with you as you kind of go forward, maybe into seeing people in groups. So I will open the breakout rooms. You're in the same group as you were before, so you can continue your discussions.
Yeah, so there was some really lovely thinking. If that gets put in some theory, that would be great.
Really great. Fauna, did you get an invite? Yes, you did. Good.
And I'd imagine Nina's stuck, but you can't see without the image.
Okay, I'm putting on slide show. There we go. So you should have it quite big now. Oh, God. Sorry.
Oh, I've gone again.
We're nearly there. There we are.
Oh.
Look at that.
Oh, wow, that's good. Excellent. How
So you can,
isn't it?
yeah.
Everyone has a different experience of their relation to others in the group.
Yeah. So this was, if you like, this was a social experiment for us because we thought this is what would happen. And though some people seem to be fairly consistently in the same place, for example, Vorna, it's really interesting. You're often somewhere in the bottom row. But Jalja, you seem to move around a bit. Then some people's screens don't have everybody on them. So I think it's fascinating.
And how does that then affect your experience of the group that you're in?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I must confess that, Ros, after you said that your student, I'm also in the middle now, and I was at the start, and I quickly moved my square away.
How did that feel, Richard? What urged you to move?
I was like, oh, good. Does everyone else see me at the top and think that I'm somehow the leader here? I must move myself away from that position.
Wow. Yes.
No,
so I think go on.
I'm between the two of you, actually, at the minute on my screen. So isn't that interesting? Depends on whose screen.
Yeah, really does.
Yes.
Everyone's experience is unique.
And Enid, what's your experience of being between the two of us?
You're on mute, Enid.
Well, I didn't even notice until Richard mentioned it, and then I suddenly realised, oh, I'm there. It feels really very nice. I rather like it. I'm okay with it, but it took me by surprise because I was busy focusing on the two of you and other people speaking in the group, and I hadn't actually noticed until suddenly I realised, oh, it's not Richard who's there, it's me.
And then there's also, if we have very large groups, the person who's on the second or third page as well, which I think, I know it's just interesting. So I suppose individually we're often on the first page, but someone that we're looking for is on the third page or second page. And it's just a very interesting experience, and I think a bit odd. So we'd like to hear back from you about what you found out in your groups, or maybe you had a very long break. And again, we'd like to hear from each group. We've got about 15 minutes, just under 15 minutes. So thinking theories, what did you find out? Oh, Richard's disappeared. He's not really not going to talk about it. So I'm interested by this silence. What's going on in this silence in the group?
I didn't want to hog the conversation.
What comes up for other people in these silences?
Yeah, that's the same with me. I didn't want to hog the conversation. I always feel I'm the first to jump in. I had that experience when I was training as well. So I'm curious about the silence and not jumping in too quickly.
Are there others who have different experiences in those long silences after?
For me, I go in well, I'm not sure we talked about theory, so it's like I haven't done my homework.
What did you talk about, Isabel?
I can't even remember, that's the problem. So, I'm fried. I'm like, we had a good conversation, but I don't have a clue what we were saying.
Who else was in your group, Isabel? Let's see if they can help.
Yeah, I remember that. Richard, Jude, and Nina. I don't know where she's gone. We didn't hear.
Nina is here, but her video's off. She's still here, I hope.
Yeah, well, I reflected on my training group. So when we moved from the foundation year to the advanced group, how there was people that had been in the year above us, and the 5 of us foundation years joined 3 of the ones that were already there the year above us. And even though we've spent the whole year on Zoom and we're all just equal on the screen, there was still a very clear distinction between those people that were the year above us. And you can imagine if we'd been physically in the room, that they would have sat together. And even though we couldn't do that, or they couldn't do that, and we couldn't stick together as second years, it was almost like there was a deference to them, that we would look to them to have sort of for their experience and their input. And it's almost like they became mini leaders in a way. But that over the year, I think that's kind of sort of raised that initial sort of idea in Margot of them as separate and us as a distinct group. We've kind of merged. You can definitely feel that we've learned to realise that, you know, we do have something to contribute, and we're all learning from each other. So yeah, I reflected on that.
Wonderful. So you gave a really nice description about how the imago changes during the year. And I'm interested, Jude and anybody else in the group, whether you think that was easier to integrate with the others online or harder, or whether it made a difference at all.
Yeah, nice question, Nathan.
I think in my experience, it might actually have been easier, I think, in a sense, because there wasn't the ability to physically sit together, or physically for them to go for lunch together, or so it's almost yeah, that those sort of physical barriers weren't there. So actually we gelled. But yeah,
I can see that. I can see that.
I think one of the things that is particularly different is the breakout rooms. So whereas people choose to go into groups, and though of course you can have breakout rooms that you choose to go into, generally the trainer just creates rooms and you're in them. So in a sense, then you're with people you may not usually choose to be with. And in fact, we can manipulate that as well.
I was going to say, we would deliberately manipulate that to move things along and shake things up. Oh, the power we have online, it's so amazing.
But I think that creates an interesting dynamic then between the leaders and the members, that in that way we have more power, that we may in another way have less contact with you. So we're going to be coming on specifically to looking at the role of the leader in a minute. Jane, I'd love to hear from you. Go on, just like burst out and say whatever it was.
For me, about what we were talking about in the small groups.
Please.
What were we talking about? I think we were talking about how we all sat, you know, the logistics of where we all sat, and how we were drawn to different people and how we connected with them. I was reflecting on my own training group, and how, you know, if I would always sit on this particular sofa and if someone else was sat on it, you know, the dynamics. And I do think that, you know, again, it's the parallels that we're reflecting on, but also how different it is online. But I'm also thinking whether we are much more open online, possibly, than we would be within a big training group that you were seeing every month. So, yeah.
I think we've talked about this and wondering about it. In many ways, it's harder for people to withdraw because there isn't a back of the room. I don't know, I trained at the Burn as well, and there was the white sofa at the back of the room where if you didn't want to participate, you sat and you were naughty and WhatsApped each other. And there is no back of the classroom now. We're all in the front of the classroom together.
Yeah.
And in that sense, the potential for game playing, I think, is reduced. But with that, there are also less strokes available, and intimacy is something we have to work quite hard to create. But activity, if we're back to time structuring, is very easy to create.
And of course, that's fantastic in a training group because it means people learn a lot. It's fantastic in a supervision group. It can be a problem in a therapy group because rather than moving towards greater authenticity and intimacy, you go on that kind of helping each other and giving people useful advice activity. I do a lot of, I do supervision with a couple of people that are trainee group analysts. So they're that particular psychodynamic model. And we'll come on to this a bit more in a minute, but the leaders are much more passive. They're much more about letting the group get on with it. And they've really found that's been a hindrance to the group developing a real depth of intimacy in terms of therapeutic movement. However, as training groups, it's been great because people really learn a lot in a way that sometimes they don't because they get caught up in all the other stuff, the past timing and the games and the scripty stuff. So it's really interesting, the differences. And segue into where we're going in a moment, I think it really makes a difference to how you run the group as a leader. Because the other thing that's happened in these group analysis, psychoanalytic groups, is because the leader is passive, in a bigger group, they actually disappear off the front screen. So if you're on page 1, you don't actually have an experience of a leader on your page, which again is really interesting in terms of what that means or doesn't mean for how the group responds in the absence of a leader.
Enid, do you want to share, as you were saying that you can hold yourself back?
Well, we did spend quite a bit of time talking about the leader and how in individual therapy, and Gina was saying how she always dresses in a certain way to put on the role, and I was talking about how difficult it is online to see the leader visually. It's not so easy. And I had an experience of a constellation workshop where somehow managed to create the same image as you would have in an actual workshop, more or less anyway, enough. And I hadn't realized till then how much the visual impacts on me, because I don't think of myself as being very visual, really. I'm much more kinesthetic. But it was interesting that. So we were talking about how does the leader hold themselves as the leader, and I think we concluded it was more in their energy somehow, and that somehow in that they're able to hold the group, and the group knows they're the leader, but it's not visibly obvious, unless they come in some very sharp clothes or something like that. But most people, I think, don't do that in the TA world. But that was interesting, really. I think that was mostly our focus, wasn't it? You two? Yeah.
Wonderful.
Enid, that leads on beautifully to an experiment that we're going to invite you to participate in next, which is about the experience of being leader. And we're doing this in the large group. I'll just share the screen again so you can actually quite partly, because I really love the picture. I'm very visual. Lots of pictures are necessary for me. So here is a leader, Jack Sparrow. And this, what the welcome back refers to, you've just had a break, but we just changed the timing slightly. So, a bit of contracting. Are you up for a brief social experiment where each of you sees what it's like to imagine being leader of this group? And part of that is that Nathan and I, as we are the identified leaders of this group, will turn our videos off. So in a sense, that gives you more of the space to imagine yourself as leaders. I'd like you to take a moment. I'll just talk you through it, so don't do it yet. I'll bring you back into the large screen before. First, we'd like you to close your eyes for a moment and imagine that you are the leader of this group. And then open your eyes and, using just your body and expression, see if you can take leadership or command of this group. So this is without your words, so you're not using your voice. Then unmute yourself and see if you can become the leader of the group with your voice.
So, Ros, will you give them a cue to at what point to unmute?
I absolutely will. So I'm now stopping the share. If everybody mutes themselves except for me right now, and I will talk you through it, and I will now disappear as well. So just to check with you, Nathan, do you want to disappear too? You did, and then you came back again. Just before we go into it, is there any confusion about the exercise? Great. All right. So I'd like you to just close your eyes for a minute and imagine that you are at conference, the Yukata conference, leading a workshop on groups. And you've got your PowerPoint there, and you've prepared for this and thought about it. And you're the one that's managing and structuring and holding this group. And now I'd like you to open your eyes and let this group that you have arrived with know through your body language, your expression, your movements, how you are the leader. And now unmuting yourself, see how you can take leadership of this group.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the group. It's nice to see you.
It took me a minute to work out where you were from. That's interesting. I have a reluctance to do this. I just feel I have to because somebody has to step in, which is very interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. How's everybody doing so far within the group?
We're all being very polite and giving each other turns.
I'm not sure actually whether we are supposed to be speaking, so that might be an interesting development.
Yes, we are allowed to speak. She said, when you've done your body language, then you're allowed to talk.
So it's interesting, there's only a few that was only myself, Enid and Vorna, is it, that have spoken so far? Have you spoken, Jude?
No.
Okay, so that's what I'm curious about, is how many have spoken and how many are not speaking. I think it's quite good practice for me to assert myself. So thank you for this space and the fact that I'm able to do this.
You're doing a grand job, Jane.
Thank you, Enid. But I'm curious about the silence and how I would like other members of the group to speak, which is interesting as well. How long I could hold that silence.
So I'm coming back in again, though I'd actually love to do this as a much longer process and see what emerges. Thank you so much, all of you, for participating, even silently, or Jane. Whoa, it's like, what's it like for you to have me come back? I felt I could sit back and just let you take us into 5:45.
Oh, well, thank you, Rosalind. That's very kind of you. It must be all about turning myself up the right way now. I feel empowered, I think, through it, through my experience of being so unsettled and ungrounded. It's obviously given me some power.
Yeah, well, it was really lovely the way you started to take over. You're the same size as everybody else, and yet you both greeted people and then you noticed the process.
Yeah, thank you.
Lovely. And other people seem to be willing for you to do that. And I think as you'd have gone, there might have been more reflections on what it was like for them. Vorna, what was it like for you that Jane then became more of a leader at that point?
I didn't experience Jane as the leader. I experienced her speaking with my permission. So I still experience myself as a leader.
Wonderful. That is brilliant. So how interesting. You were a very permission-giving leader.
I still felt that I was in charge of the group and that I could have directed Jane if I wanted to, but I was letting it run to see where it went.
Wonderful.
Lovely. What a great reflection. And isn't that interesting? I lost who the leader was then and assumed it was the person who was talking. What about those of you who are silent? What happened for you? It would be nice if you were unsilent so I could hear.
I suppose, yeah, I'm so used to being the leader when I'm doing my online lessons and taking over. I'm in my sort of casual clothes and I hadn't got my headspace into, I moved off the sofa, which was quite interesting because I was sort of quite relaxed there and I thought, yeah, but then I felt a reluctance to speak, which was quite interesting. It was quite interesting. I don't mind silences, and it's quite interesting to just almost like watch and see what happened.
Well, I love, Jude, that you also referenced the point that almost Enid made, that sometimes we need the props of our clothing to feel that we're fully in that leadership role. When we were silent, everybody was shifting and doing slightly different things. Jane, somehow you still managed to hold a pose that pulled me, even silent. Again, Enid, you standing up was something that pulled me. And Richard,
Sorry,
you had a strong silent presence.
Sorry, Nathan, could you repeat that? What did you say about me?
Somehow in that pose you took, you sort of went slightly sideways on, and something about your presence pulled me, even in the silence, that there was a strength and a commandingness to that.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for that. It's a lovely stroke. Thank you.
Thinking again of seating plans, my eye was drawn to Jane because she was in the middle of the screen. You're actually directly in front of me right now. Whereas Vorna is slightly down and to my left. So I'm reflecting on how I experienced the two of you, in that you were in a different place on my screen for me, which is, again, quite interesting. What was it like for you when we disappeared and you lost your identified leaders, even though it was with some warning? Again, it would be lovely to hear from someone who's been quite quiet.
I think I knew the group by then a little bit, a slight bit of familiarity. So it wasn't like we were being thrown at the deep end of the pool. It felt all right.
Okay. I wondered if Enid's reluctance to take that role had something to do with there's a vacuum, but I don't know if it's okay to fill it. It's sort of we've been told there are one lot of leaders, now there are others. So that's quite an odd feeling. I don't know, Enid, what was your reluctance, do you think?
Well, I haven't geared up to this, so I didn't want to be bothered. But I felt I might have to. If you see where I'm coming from.
Very much so.
I wouldn't be a noisy leader anyway. That is my style. So, you know, so probably I was doing it much more like I normally would. You know, I'm not a particularly vociferous leader. And hopefully don't always need to be. So, but I felt, well, you were the leaders, and it's like, I didn't really particularly want to be bothered, but I felt probably I ought to. That sense of public duty that's so strong in me.
I remember doing.
Somebody else doesn't, but since other people were busy doing it, I actually had a feeling Isabel was going to, but she somehow never got to it.
Yeah, I was stopping myself.
Yeah, every time I watch you, Isabel, I can see the words kind of forming, but they never quite reach the screen.
It just takes too long for the words to form.
Can I just say something to Ros? Well, and Nathan, I think what was really beneficial to me was how clear the contract was in terms of what was expected of us and how you came off video, and the contract was really clear. So that gave me confidence as well. So thank you very much, both of you, for that.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you. It was a little bit of a risk for us, and so, but it's lovely to get that stroke back from you.
I felt really anxious actually when you two disappeared, because I just thought, oh, now everybody's got to fight to be the leader. And I'm always uncomfortable in those positions.
Emily.
I experienced the words "see if you can take leadership" as rather confrontational for me. And as somebody that works in a leadership role, it felt like a game. And I felt that was my experience. And I don't experience, I'm certainly not saying I experienced you two as gamey, but it felt like a hook into something for me that I didn't want to be part of. It's unusual because I can fill airtime. So that's where I went and really held back, and then just put myself back on mute because I thought I don't want any part of this. So where I went to was an uncomfortable place, which is I was reflecting on and writing down, thinking, what happened for me there? And when I heard Borna say a fight for or a reference to the word fight, I thought, oh, okay, someone else felt a pang of something that I understood there too. So I wanted to share that with you guys, not to leave it not unsaid by myself.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. I really appreciate that. It's we spent a lot of time trying to find language that wouldn't invite that. And then as I said it, but as I said it, I thought, this is so interesting. It could be, it's a little bit like There Can Only Be One. I don't know, I can't remember. It's people who fight with swords until there's only one left. And I can't remember what the movie is now. But he had Sean Connery in it originally.
I was thinking
yes.
Hunger Games is a bit more modern.
Kind of that thing.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, isn't it, when, you know, that is another part of leadership. And in a sense, yes, when the leaders suddenly leave, and that's, I guess, what I meant, is there was suddenly that space. What happens in a group?
Yeah, and
go on, Jude.
No, I just wondered whether Richard being the only male, whether that gender thing would come in, because I know in my training group there's only one male, and there's sometimes you can almost like sense that there's that expectation that, you know, being the only man, or you know, that I just was interested whether that would play a part at all.
Did you feel the pressure, Richard, as a man to take that role, or
not really? I was kind of thinking, what am I leading here? What leading, doing what? Am I going to get it wrong? Can I get it wrong if I'm the leader?
Yeah.
What do I do? Do I get us to dance? Do I get us to sing?
So there was an expectation to have to do something with leadership once you had it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love your question.
Am I going to be entertaining enough?
Yeah. Really good. Jude, I loved your question because it's different here being workshop leader, but actually that knowledge of being the only man in the group often makes me stand back so that I don't feel like I'm hogging space or doing that. So it would often have the opposite effect on me, but really useful reflection.
I would like to challenge that, just to be confrontational. How do you know there's only one man in the group?
Oh, great.
Yeah, so I was making assumptions there. Yeah, I suppose, yeah, what my initial thought was that it would be a gender thing, whether, yeah, that my experience in the group that I'm in, my training group, is that there is only one man, and he will sometimes, like Nathan's just said, feel like he needs to step back because he doesn't want to take all.
And Isabel, you raised such a lovely question that we just don't have the time to go much further with. But especially in this kind of online group where actually I am only getting your head and shoulders, regardless how somebody might be identifying gender-wise, I will have an experience of what I think them to be, and of course act according to that internal schema that I have, and perhaps less able to see the difference when I only have a head and shoulders shot. But I think that's such a great question for us to reflect on.
I'd like you to just note now, in the process of being together, I experience the group as quite lively now in this discussion. With this little bit of discomfort, I also experience that there's a sort of, for many people, an increase in closeness with that sort of, there's a slight game, but then there's a reflection on that experience. Am I right in interpreting what's happening? I notice everyone's sitting more forward, for example, and your faces are filling the screen. And I sense feeling more close to all of you.
Yes,
Can
and
I hear back
during the activity as well, I think there was comfort in so many of us not speaking up. I think if there were more people who tried to speak up and take the role of the leader, there would have been pressure that, I'm also expected to sort of do this. But because there were so many people silent, there was a lot of comfort in just stepping back and saying, I don't need to do this. So I got that. I don't know whether it was a game or a permission, but I did experience that comfort in most of us not speaking up.
Well, it certainly wasn't an intended game. We thought quite hard about it not being, but it might be experienced that way.
Yeah.
But what I experience now is everybody is filling up their screens with their heads and is sitting closer. So for me, there's something that's happened in the group that is slightly shifted, if we like, if we're thinking about the group imago at this point. Do people have a similar experience, or do you feel more distant at this point?
I think we all went through a slightly uncomfortable experience together. So I think I personally experienced myself as closer because we shared an experience which leaves us with questions.
Yes, exactly. That slight rupture and then coming closer together.
I think the fact that you're using the words we is interesting, and that's made me feel connected again.
Okay.
When you just said we,
yes,
an uncomfortable experience, and until then, I felt quite splintered off.
Okay. So the word we was important there. What about others in the group at the moment?
Yeah, can I just say something? I was thinking how the experience has brought the group closer together. And I think that was, I think that's a clever experience. And I agree with you. I think it's evolving, isn't it, as the time goes by, for us all to be closer in that way. So yeah, I'm noticing that as well.
Well, I hear more honesty shared of personal experience. Gina?
I think it brought us together in a way almost like a family thing brings us together. Because you gave us some kind of task, almost activity to do. You just said, now you have to become leaders. So almost first we focused on when you disappear and what we have to do. So at least this was my experience, how we had to focus. And when I remember myself, I knew that first I have to think, what, and then what to do with my eyes closed. So when I opened my eyes, I had to move and make my posture and everything and so on. And then when we unmuted ourselves, I had to start considering, do I speak now? But then, of course, I looked at everybody else. And then I started considering other people, not only myself. And at this very moment, when I started considering other people, this competition thing was not my first thought. And this is where I say almost like a family, because this is, I don't know what is the word, as if there is a precedence there. So am I really, do I have the right almost to be the leader? But this is in it there. Can I speak above her? Can I really do this? There are other people, but they have so much more to say. And then, so, and then at the end of all this, I was so happy just to sit there, not to speak at all. And it was really, yeah, I was really happy in my family.
I'm going to draw this bit to a close. And it's interesting, isn't it, that there are people who are willing, like hearing from Enid and Gina, that they were very comfortable with not having to go forwards. Enid felt a little bit more duty bound. And Emily, I love that you reflected your experience of the possible for game, the competition, and Vorna talked about that as well, and what happened to you as a result, because Vorna came forward and spoke, and Emily retreated, and Isabel was getting there. Jane was.
I was ready for a fight, to be honest. I felt
you
it
were
in
ready
my
for a
heart,
fight?
like, yeah, it was like an invitation for a fight for me. It's like, who's gonna be the leader? You have to be like, my heart was going, grrr, I'm ready to go.
Love it.
Oh, wow. So you enjoyed the anticipation of that, yes.
Well, yes and no, because I felt like I need to care for my group. Like I felt because that's my script as well. I want to look after the group, but not in a too visible way. So I was there with my presence.
Yeah.
Yes. I actually really saw that. So we're heading towards the end of today, and we want to put you back once more into small groups. I've changed the groups around a little bit. You may find that there possibly is one person you've been with, but I hope I've changed them enough so that you've got at least one or two new people in the three groups. And we're looking towards, we'd like you to draw, write, co-create together your thinking on how the theory might have changed with the influence of working online. We've showed you already one demonstration of how one of our trainees created the new seating plan. I'm going to also share with you an image that we have come up with to express the new group boundary. Can you see this now?
Yes.
The new structure. So what we discovered with our trainees is that the external group boundary was one of the ones that was the most impacted. And so they described themselves as experiencing holding hands across the divides of the screen. So almost as well, each square, they're holding hands with each other to hold the safety of the group.
So what was,
sorry, I was going to, I'll finish the sentence and then hand over to Nathan. What was particularly important in this is that usually if someone comes to a physical training room, there is the walls and the confidentiality and the contracting and no interruptions. Online, people had to really think about how they were going to create that safety without the safety of the room. And in a sense, Nathan and I became less potent at holding that because we're a small square on a screen. And we had to hand over some of our potency to our trainees to be really exquisitely aware of that holding space. Nathan, what were you going to say?
Well, yes, it was just putting out a couple of points of that. Of what you're saying really is that the trainees experienced in a very positive way the desire to take responsibility for their section of the external group boundary. So rather than there being one room as there would have been historically, there's now lots of interlocked or interlinking squares, circles, bits of the boundary that people felt they felt a positive adultness in being able to do that. It wasn't something that was disempowering, it was something they experienced as empowering, actually, wasn't it?
And if we're thinking of the group Imago that they will bring back into the training room, I think it will be a heightened awareness of how important this safety is. They will bring back that awareness with them. So I see that as a real gain over the year. And then for us, the relationship from here we are in the center, I've got the two of us there as two white circles, how we make contact with each individual in the group. I think Vorna said, the moment I said we, she started to feel more in contact with the group again. And I think that experience of we-ness, we've had no choice except to be part of the group because we're small squares. We don't have our special chairs. We don't have a special bigger square on the screen. And so what we've discovered is that by being more vulnerable and with our trainees, that we've been able to invite everyone, including ourselves, into that more vulnerable and connected space. So we've been very aware of that internal group boundary as being very much a point of contact.
I'm just going to challenge one word you said, Ros. Well, everything else was wonderful. You did say we had no choice. I think that's not true because other people have done it differently. I think we made that choice, embraced it, and it's then worked really well for us.
Thank you. That was a bit of a discount, wasn't it?
Was, yeah.
Yeah, that's a picture of us trying to do hybrid, by the way, which was, we had 2 weekends of that, and it was the most exhausting, rewarding, challenging. We won't even go further, but think of the issues that will bring up around privilege and boundaries and connection and who's in the room, who's out of the room. But I love this image here of one of the people in the room holding one of the men who's out of the room in a group exercise. It involved a lot of tech, as you can see there. So, future theory. we're a little bit over time again, but we would like you to have a chance to go back into small groups, and we've arbitrarily, I've spelt privilege wrong. That's interesting. Arbitrarily, we've put you into groups again. So I'd like you to go into your group and consider, from this perspective of being a leader, the contact and potency that may have changed, or what might be happening with your experience of leaders or your experience as a leader. You're thinking on group structure and seating plans, and thinking about time structuring and the provisional group imago. And if you can, see what happens with your drawing. See if you can make this, make a new diagram. You know, Byrne was very keen on, if you can't diagram it, it's not TA, or I think he said if it's not a circle, it's not TA. See if you can create something physical that describes maybe your experience of today from those perspectives. So I will go back to, I will stop the share. Hello.
Hello.
So did you come up with any new theory, Jane or Vorna?
Everybody back now. Welcome back, everybody. We're really keen to see what you've come up with.
We didn't really come up with a new theory. We're just talking in terms of the group process within the small groups, within the breakout rooms, which was easier to think about that visually, whatever that concept would look like. I think that was something that we all agreed on. So that
would, I suppose that would be thinking of seating plans where you're in it's a more intimate space and people's faces are bigger on the screen, aren't they?
Yeah.
I agree. That's one of the things that has particularly impacted the leaders of the group, because Nathan and I tend to teach together, so we've got each other to talk to in the breakout spaces. But if you're facilitated by yourself and the trainees go away into the breakout rooms, you're left with yourself on the screen, which is a very interesting experience. I've had that in TA 101s particularly. So I think there is increased intimacy for trainees in breakout rooms, but a loss for the trainer unless they go into the breakout rooms, which I think can be quite invasive because you can't knock. You just suddenly arrive, which I think is it's a contract a lot around that if I'm going to do it.
So again, in a normal workshop, we'd probably be wandering around the group, just checking in how people are doing and maybe giving some suggestions if they're a bit stuck. And we just doesn't feel like to do that, does it?
But another of our trainees said how much they loved the breakout rooms because they were silent. Whereas in a training center, it's quite noisy in your breakout room often because it's the corner of a room and you're much more visible. So, you know, that even just in what you've just said, there is an awful lot there.
And as that's happening, I'm noticing Vorna's got a lovely change of scenery, which is fantastic.
Wow.
So I don't know if
Vorna, I realised you're talking, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, they were talking about the sun in our group. It just made me realise I've got about another half an hour to get the last bit.
You couldn't do that in a real world conference, could you?
Why not?
Well, perhaps you could, yeah.
So you were talking about the sun in your group, were you?
Yes.
About
how we'd been inside all day, and some families were outside and the sun was outside and we were inside. And I must admit, last night I was thinking, oh, I don't know whether I'm regretting giving up my whole weekend now to the conference. And I thought, well, I'll probably sit outside anyway. So I had planned to do this with the laptop, but just never did it this afternoon.
And another good example, thinking theory, of how different that external boundary is, because you're not held by a conference room and a hotel in Milton Keynes. You have the freedom to sit in what looks like a wonderful garden in the sunshine and still enjoy the contact you're having with us.
Yeah.
Could I just ask,
Jane.
what time this workshop's finishing?
Well, we talked about extending it to 1:45 earlier.
Oh, okay.
Were you there for that contracting?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, no, that's fine. So 5:45.
We started about 20 minutes late, and so we've tried to sort of fit it into the time, but asked if it was okay for the time.
The room will actually just close at 1:45 anyway, so we.
Okay, good.
If we all get kicked out at that point, that's why.
Okay, thank you.
So we are winding down, and we are interested in hearing back from what happened to you in your rooms and any thoughts you've had. And also, it would be good to hear everyone's voice, you know, as we finish this group today. So we've got 10 minutes to share between each other.
In our group, we didn't think of a visual. It's not easy, but we said that it was necessary for leaders online to be to really use their potency to know participants and understand everybody's needs, so that we are sure that everybody is heard and are allowed to be present. Also, the importance of contracting to be present, because it's so easy to get distracted, because you know you're at home, you've got 100 things like I could juggle, or I don't know, whatever, using WhatsApp. So it's contracting to stay present, I think, helps everyone. It's like okay, we have our agency, but it's good to be helped to be there, and also having an agenda, yeah, with the whole group, like a whole group agreement. So, you know, to be sure what we're doing together and not go off on tangents or whatever.
Yeah, that's a really useful.
Thank you, Will. How do you think the leader expresses their potency? Because in a sense, we were looking at that earlier. How do you know that the leader is potent online?
If the objectives are met. So you start your group with a contract. This is what we're here to do today. I will know if the leader's potent if at the end of the session I go away satisfied that the objectives have been met and that my needs have been met.
Yeah.
Yinka, I'm sorry, I just have to ask, how are we doing on your criteria then?
I am going to be totally honest.
Please.
When the bump came out for the conference, I saw Ross's name and I just thought, I've not seen her since I sat CTA. I want to see Ross. I didn't read the blurb. So I've turned up today, not even knowing what we're going to talk about. I'm here just to see Ross. So my needs have been met, as in I've seen Ross. Sorry, folks, there's nothing about TA or being a professional. Yeah.
Well, I'm very glad your needs have been met, Yinka, and lovely to see you again.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Let's hear from everyone as we finish. I'm aware that we've now got about 6 minutes left.
We didn't create a diagram, which is hardly surprising. It was a big deal. No. But I spend a fair bit of time thinking about the one you already have, and that the idea of the responsibility of each person for their own boundary is actually so important, particularly in training groups where people take responsibility for their child ego state, supported by the leaders. So we spend a bit of time trying to work out how would you picture the leader's place, a physical group, because it would be different. And there was something about you being in the middle that I wasn't easy with. And not only visually, it didn't quite express how I experience you as being in the role of leaders today, which feels like it's more about holding the external boundary while we are also each holding our own. So it was interesting. We mostly moved around that a fair bit and were thinking about, oh, what is it like now? What it'd be like in person, you know, and how will that change things? But I wouldn't say we reached any massive conclusions. I don't know what Jude and Shalajas think about that, but
as you say that, Enid, I sort of have the image of actually maybe the new group structure diagram would take the leaders out of the center and put them on the ring, as it were, with all the members, but somehow with very large arms that go round the whole thing. Yeah. And I really like that. It goes for me with the image of everyone on the screen because we're all the same size. And we haven't got our special chairs. So there's something about that I think would be lovely. I'm going to change it. Oh, Enid, thank you so much.
Well, it was a group thing. And I suppose the largeness would be in your very long arms.
Yes, they're very, very long. Exactly. Big arms.
So I'm noticing the time and really not wanting us to have the experience at the group end with Zoom just kicking us out. So if we can get a 1 or 2 words from those who haven't said anything, just to close the process today. Gestalt, yes. Yeah.
Nina, we realize you're dark and we can't see your face, and can we hear you? Is she still there? Was she there in the group that she was in?
Well,
I didn't hear her.
She didn't seem to be hearing us, although it said there were 4 of us.
Yeah, because it went in there. How odd. Okay, so maybe she is already not here. Yeah, if we could just hear quickly from everybody leaving, you know, what are you able to take away today?
I think I'm very introspective and reflective about more looking at the group dynamics in an online forum, taking back more questions than probably what I keep with. Thank
you. I've been surprised how intimate it's been with the group, and I've enjoyed the process, and I'm taking away just a reflection on why I chose this workshop and what I've got from it, and I've enjoyed interacting and connecting with everybody. So thank you, everyone, and apologies for my technical challenges. So that's work in progress. But thank you, everyone, and thank you, Rosalind and Nathan. I have really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you, Jane.
I've enjoyed our training, and I feel I will take away a lot from today, and I think I might not process fully until I've actually said goodbye, because I'm at the end of the day and I'm tired. It's made me think about the niche in the market for a platform or a part of this platform that actually allows facilitators to permit seating, to allow for certain regularities, and how functional that would be for lots of services that would work with this platform. And I think the service that can offer that would be really very valuable to training groups and stuff like that. So it's made me think, actually, it's great to diagram how it is, and I sense there's a real purpose in being able to attend to this as well.
Wow.
And I
Wow,
have zero,
Emily.
I've got zero tech on my side, honestly. I've got a sand tray over there. So this is not, but I think there's a niche there that's important.
I was imagining a whole new business being created by you, Emily. So
not yet. No, I'm planning. It's going to be a short trip.
Well, I think we kept forgetting to ask, but we really love the image that we've made of all your different screenshots. Is there anyone here who does not give us permission to share that on a website? It will probably be on the video anyway. Thank you very, very much, because I just thought it was a wonderful example of our world. Richard, I heard you say no, so I'm going to just
thank you all, and thank you both. What was good? What did you say? I didn't hear.
No, I was just inviting you to check out. And oh yeah, what are you taking?
What am I taking? That sometimes I find the co-creativeness a little bit uncomfortable. I'm kind of curious about what that's about. Because, like I said earlier, I'm in a co-creative supervision group. It feels a bit leaderless sometimes, and we're all like, "Well, hang on, these two are the supervisors. Aren't they supposed to be leading us?" But it's about all of us being together.
Really
so yeah, I'm taking away to explore that discomfort.
Lovely, Richard. Thank you. Who hasn't checked out? They seem to have not kicked us out. So, couple of words from people who haven't said goodbye.
I just want to say thank you. It's been really valuable. The theory was really useful, but I think it's the experience of being in the group and experience that how things changed just in a short space of time. I think has been really good learning and lots to take away and reflect on. So thank you very much.
You're welcome, Jude. Lovely to meet you. Is it Gina? Have you? Is Enid? Who hasn't? Is there anybody else who hasn't said goodbye or spoken at this point? Bye bye.
Thank you, lovely people. I'm really, really happy to have been with you. I have to admit that I really, really sneaked into the group to be with Ross and Nathan. And I'm really, really happy that I have met all of you. And I really, really enjoyed to have Upside Down Jane to be our leader. I'm really happy that I have met Enid. I really wanted to meet you, Enid, since very, very long time. And I hope I will come to your family constellation soon. And all of you people, I really, really enjoyed to be with you. Bye.
Bye. Orna, were you wanting to say something there? I saw you unmute yourself.
I was just, I think that what I've taken from today is that it's really emphasized that everybody's view really is different. And today it's actually been demonstrated that that is in a literal sense online on Zoom as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yes. Lovely. Thank you, Vorna. Is there anybody else who hasn't said goodbye who would like to?
I just want to say well done, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Enid.
Been a lot of fun. So I'm aware people do have other things to get to at the conference, so we really probably better let them go, hadn't we?
We do, yes.
It's really nice working with you all today. Thank you.
Nice
Thank
to
you.
meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Isabel.
And I think